One of the reasons I came back at that age is that I felt I could take a lot of beating and recover. Right? So I did that, and I joined after 2 years a Tata Research organization in Pune for a couple of years. Pune was a wonderful experience and made lots of good friends. And even there, I realized that a PhD did not have that much value. And Indian companies keep PhDs the way you'd keep Brahmins, khana khilaya, bahut punya milega kind of thing.
My wife's real uncle, he's no more now, but he was a chair professor at MIT, and even in the 70s, he took this call. He said that I must give back. So he studied in IIT Kanpur, he went abroad,
Yes.
he came back. He came and taught in IIT for a year, but he said he just couldn't take it. He said, I cannot bear to struggle for chalk in the classroom, and
You have to be entrepreneurial in India.
Yeah, that's all
Right?
And he
India,
said there are cows floating into the class
Absolutely.
suddenly
Even
in
IIT Bombay.
in IIT Kanpur. He said after 1 year, he said, I love the country, I'll come and visit, but I cannot teach here. My father-in-law, he used to say this, that his biggest frustration with IITs and engineers, he's saying IIT kiya, फिर IIM किया और साबुन तेल बेचा. क्या किया लाइफ में? मतलब he said if you are an engineer, you should not be doing an MBA or something. You should be solving something, taking your engineering. He said साबुन तेल बेचा.
Absolutely.
What did you do with your life? He said फिर IIT नहीं देना चाहिए था.
Absolutely.
That was his whole pain.
Our college system is such that by the time the kids have come to us as engineers, they lack that zing which you would like them to have, that innovation and that kind of mindset and all that. So in COVID, we had the opportunity that people were saying to us, why don't you do what you do with school children? So we did it online, inside a simulator, teaching them robotics, right? 7th standard upwards.
And what kind of solutions came out of, this project?
I'll tell you the biggest insight that we had, okay? The first thing that we tried to do was that we had this knowledge because we started taking this robot and teaching kids in our lab. We found that problems that people would take a year or so to solve outside there, because they had to build everything from scratch. Once I gave them this robotic kit, which is open source and all that, they could crack it in about a month. And more important than that is that the student at the end of this experience, having built something, was highly empowered and confident as an engineer. They got this confidence
success,
that I can build something, actually something to solve a problem. And that empowerment is very powerful. We turn out 1 million engineers every year. And I feel that we need to really increase our scale. So now I'm looking at how to scale this up 100 times, right? So we are looking at how to do it. And my desire is that, see, what's going to happen is that AI is going to reduce a lot of jobs. A lot of robots are going to take over people's jobs. But I would prefer if the robot that is taken over your job is a robot that you have
created. Absolutely. That you have created.
Right? Nicely put.
Yeah.
We did it! The robot finished the route perfectly!
So welcome, Kavi. Welcome to our show. I hope you find this as interesting and as fascinating as we hope we will.
So it's quite interesting that when I was preparing for this, putting myself in the right state of mind, I found myself almost going back quite early to see what is there that one can share, right, about this entire journey. So I'll get prompted by your questions, maybe, because it's very crazy and I wouldn't know where to start.
So let's pick it up from there. So you've charted quite a journey, right? You were in Imperial College, Oxford, worked with IBM, and then decided to come back to India at a time when most people were not coming back to India.
Yes.
And you decided to build e-Yantra. I just want to understand what made you pick robotics and, embedded systems as your subject of choice?
Very interesting question. So fine, after this sense of, doing a bachelor's at Imperial College, then master's and PhD at Oxford, then working at IBM Research Labs and all that, it gives you a sense of kind of invincibility, right? False sense of invincibility. And so in 1990, I decided that, I'm at an age where I could take a lot of beating, and India looks like the Wild West because it was liberalizing and all that kind of stuff. And I said that perhaps we can do something there. And one was idealistic and be the change that you wish to see and all that stuff, basically, And I thought that if someone with my privilege cannot do something interesting in this country, right? Because I came from a background which is interesting. My parents are artists. My dad used to be a photographer many years with the Times of India. My mother was a painter and all these kind of things. And it gives you a sense that, hey, you have intelligence, you come back and you apply that intelligence and you'll do well. And soon you discover that this is not America, right? It's a challenge. Surviving in India is a challenge. Right? What you don't realize when you're abroad, it's like standing on the prow of a huge ship, where the ship is the country and it's taking you along with it. And at that time, coming back was like diving into a small fishing boat, which had very little infrastructure. So in 1990, I came back, and to cut a long story short, right? I tried various things. I wanted to just hang loose and discover who I was and all those kind of things. I visited a lot of IITs and IISc and Robotics Institute in Bangalore and all that. And I wasn't really impressed at that time by what was going on in the country. And plus, a PhD didn't have any value at that time, because India was not a manufacturing industry or a creative place where products are imagined and made, right? We have turnkey solutions we get from abroad, and we just build it here. And there was a kind of license raj for many years.
You're not even very research friendly either. I mean,
absolutely. Because research means risks.
Correct.
And industry is not ready to take risks. Even now, industry is uncomfortable with risks.
And money. I mean, I guess there was a resource issue at that point at least.
Absolutely. No, it's actually a scarcity mindset. It's not a resource issue, right?
Okay.
Since the 90s and earlier, I'm sure, we had the resources, but we were afraid, right? Afraid of taking risks because we were given guaranteed business. And that's in the mindset, in the DNA of many traditional businesses, right? So I came back, and after a couple of years floating around trying to get a feel of the place, I was wondering what to do. And my parents were getting very concerned about me, right? One of the reasons I came back at that age is that I felt I could take a lot of beating and recover, right? So I did that, and I joined after 2 years, a Tata research organization in Pune for a couple of years. Pune was a wonderful experience and made lots of good friends. And even there, I realized that a PhD did not have that much value. And Indian companies keep PhDs the way you'd keep Brahmins, khana khilaya, bahut punya milega kind of thing.
Nice.
Without any serious intent to actually utilize that. Okay, that's changed a lot, I must admit now. Okay. And after 2 years of that, I said, okay, enough is enough. And I was wondering what to do, almost thinking of going back abroad. And then my grandfather, who ran a business in Bombay, which was an old culture center, which had a bookshop and publishing house on Vedanta and, all these kind of things in Bombay, in Kalaghoda, in Chetna, it's called.
Oh, of course.
Right? He made me an offer that, why don't you do something with us? And I thought, fine, if I sort of marry my engineering and scientific vision to this, perhaps one can turn this into a global brand, right? And I soon discovered that others in the family thought I was absolutely crazy, right? And without much, after some time of putting things in order in the place, I handed it over to my mother, right, who continues to run it. And went off to IIT Bombay.
It's so true that when you talk about this 90s, so my wife's real uncle, he's no more now, but he was a chaired professor at MIT, and even in the 70s, he took this call. He said that I must give back. So he studied in IIT Kanpur, he went abroad, he came back. He came and taught in IIT for a year, but he he said he just couldn't take it. He said, I cannot bear to struggle for chalk in the classroom. And, it's a...
You have to be entrepreneurial in India.
Yeah, that's all.
Right?
And he
India,
said, there are cows floating into the class
Absolutely.
suddenly
Even in IIT Bombay.
In IIT Bombay. He said, after 1 year, he said, I love the country. I'll come and visit, but I cannot teach here. This is just too much for me.
So I used to get various advice, right? Like from friends at IBM, right? They used to tell me, Kavi, try it out for a couple of years. If it doesn't work, you can come back, right? Someone else used to say 2 years, some says 5 years or whatever it is. The right advice was given to me by a guy called Vinay Deshpande, who I met in Bangalore, who ran a PSI data systems, right? He became a friend, and they made amongst the first personal computers in India, right, in the 90s in Bangalore. And I was quite impressed. He said, Kavi, coming back to India is like marriage. You have to make a decision, right? If you don't decide and commit, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you'll wonder what you've done and want to get out, basically. Right?
So from that commitment, where did the journey and how did it come to happen?
Journey, actually, I was accused of having these unreasonable, global, wild ambitions. And in the context of a family business, it sounded crazy, although I don't believe so, because I saw the makings of a global brand in that business. Because what Chetna was doing is that it was making Indian culture accessible.
Correct.
Presenting Indian culture in a contemporary idiom, right?
Correct.
Like it's like not throwing out the baby of culture and tradition with the bathwater of legacy, if you like. And I felt that Indians need to be proud of their own culture and the background to be able to innovate.
Correct.
Right? By living on second-hand borrowed culture and values, you cannot be innovative and new in your thinking. So I still believe strongly in that anything that we do has to come from a underpinning of a consciousness of who you are and a pride in yourself and a respect for yourself. So I went to IIT, and the same crazy guy at IIT who got embraced by everybody. There was a very charismatic professor there who pulled me into the department. His name was Professor Deepak Phatak, Padma Shri now. And another friend who conspired with my wife to push me to IIT was Anand Deshpande, who runs a very successful...
Systems.
Yes, I met him when he was a PhD student in Indiana. Right, we were friends then, and he continues to be a very dear friend. But they pushed me to IIT, and once I got into IIT, I never looked back. Right, and IIT, I realized, is one of the few institutions which gives you tremendous opportunities. It lets you dream. Very few institutions in India encourage you to dream, and there I was amongst people who thought like me, and even more than me. Right, Phatak is an example. And he introduced me to the idea of distance education, and that's where I found my métier, if you like. So my first job at IIT was to be program coordinator for the distance education program which he had established, along with a new school. I was part of this new school, called Kanwal Rekhi School of Information Technology, which was funded by Nandan Nilekani and Kanwal Rekhi. I think they each contributed $9 million at that time to set up the school. And Phatak wanted to set up the school for 3 things, actually. He felt that computer science has become a bit Brahmanical, in the sense that too self-absorbed in doing research. He felt that research needs to be translated out and make a difference, right? So he started this culture of consulting with companies and building products for companies and all that kind of stuff. So industry outreach was one thing. Second was incubation. He built the first incubator at IIT Bombay. And in fact, Idea Forge and all these companies now came out of that original incubator. In fact, these guys used to fly the little drones outside my office in that building,
Wow.
Right? And the third was distance education. He deeply felt that there are not enough good teachers in the country, and we need to get good teachers to reach out to students to inspire them. So I was a program coordinator, and since I had the privilege of having had a somewhat media upbringing because of my father, right? I set up the first studio there, right, in our building. And I put together all the knowledge I required as a kid, basically, and set this studio up. And one more big change of culture there. Normally, they see that government agencies have a lot of bureaucracy while purchasing and all that, right? Fatak was refreshingly different. He gave me carte blanche to do whatever I like. I used to just go to Lamington Road and buy stuff, and then it's his problem to pay for it, right? And I used to tell these guys, 2 hafte mein mil jayega paisa tumko. And that's how, I mean, entrepreneurship happens when you can move like this. And
Correct.
Fatak was a guy who kind of, put most entrepreneurs to shame. And this was within the government establishment. So within the government establishment, he was able to run an entrepreneurial ship, which was remarkable, I felt. So that's where the story started. And I found that subjects like thermodynamics and theoretical stuff was lent itself well to the distance education paradigm. But when I tried to teach my subject, which is embedded systems, which is how do you build machines, intelligent machines that can do cool stuff like your washing machines, your mobile phones, your robots, and all these kind of things, where you have machines that are intelligent, which can autonomously do things, right? And you've not learned anything until you've actually built one. You've seen lights flash and things move, and that's when you realize you're an engineer.
Correct.
You built something that solves a problem. And I couldn't convey that sense online. So from that failure, I asked myself, how could we transmit that skill of building something? And then we thought of, what if we gave them a kit and then gave them problems to solve with that kit? And then we invented that kit with a young roboticist in the lab, Sachitanand Malevar, his name was. And then we even pushed out a company to manufacture these robots. This was way back in about 2008 or 9. And in fact, he became a very successful high-tech company called Next Robotics, which then used to manufacture these robots and give them to us, right? And along the way came the opportunity that there was this mission called National Mission for Education Using ICT by a very gifted IAS officer called N.K. Sinha. He had this vision that we must set up a fund of some 5,500 crores at that time. This was 2009, which should fund creative ventures in the education space. And ours was the only robotic thing in that everything else was software. We got funded, and that was the start. We've never looked back. It was a 2-year project, and there were about almost 100 different projects at that time which were funded. And we've been alive for almost about 15 years.
Wow.
Right?
And what kind of solutions came out of, this project?
I'll tell you the biggest insight that we had, okay? The first thing that we tried to do was that we had this knowledge because we started taking this robot and teaching kids in our lab. So what we did is that half my embedded systems course was theory, and the other half was think of a societal problem and solve it using this robot.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And we found that problems that people would take a year or so to solve outside there, because they have to build everything from scratch. Once I gave them this robotic kit, which is open source and all that, they could crack it in about a month.
It's
Build a
phenomenal.
working prototype in a month, right? I used to go to colleges. Students want to do robotic project in their final year. But since you didn't have a kit and Mindstorms is too expensive, right? They used to build everything from scratch. And at the end of 1 year, they had a half-built robot, which he hands over to his guide and goes away. The problem has not been solved. Even the robot has not been built. Right? Every year the same thing happens. While we build something which is reusable, you can build on layers on top of it. And more important than that is that the student at the end of this experience, having built something, was highly empowered and confident as an engineer. They got this confidence
success, right? I mean,
absolutely, that I can build something, actually something to solve a problem. And that empowerment is very powerful, we noticed. And we used to get rave reviews for that course. Right? And it became very popular. And I'll give you a simple example of what kind of things they do. Like, for instance, one team came up. They used to work in a team of 4. They want to build a lemon sorting robot.
Okay.
which separates yellow lemons from green
Green
lemons. And what they do is that they take a big hopper and then actuate it with a motor and drop one lemon at a time into a tray. And they have a webcam looking at the lemons, and they use open source software like Open CV and all that to sense the color. If it's yellow, they would have a paddle that moves this way, green paddle that moves that way. It goes into two different bins. It sounds simple and trivial, but most problems are like that. It's not rocket science. If you've mastered this technology, you can build these kind of things. And our country is full of problems that need just these kind of solutions. Okay, so that was an interesting experience. The next interesting eye-opener was when I went to industry. I was hired by Mahindra and Mahindra way back in 2007 to be a chief technology officer, right? And I told Pawan Goenka, it was at that time, right, who pulled me in, that I'll come only on condition that I report directly to VC's office, which is Anand Mahindra, because I felt that they wanted to see how the various verticals of Mahindra and Mahindra can work together to optimize the assets and experience that they have. And they felt that a CTO could do that. They had a research board which was chaired by Ashok Ganguly at that time, and had various interesting people there. I was part of that also. And I said, I'll come only if I report directly to VC's office. Much to my surprise, they agreed. So I spent one wonderful year at Mahindra and Mahindra, and it showed me many things. It showed me why deeper innovation does not happen in India, at least at that time. Okay, because I felt that from outside, these are very rich companies. They can invest a lot in research and all that. But research is risky. And it's very hard to hold on to that research talent because the Googles and Microsofts will pull them away. So it makes more sense to buy depreciated technology from abroad and incorporate it into your product line here. And then I used to go to the Scorpio factory in Nasik, right? I used to see things like, they have a Scorpio door which is being opened and closed, banged about, say, thousands of times, basically, and to just
test.
It's a quality check, right? That simple device which is doing that, they bought off the market for some 30 lakhs or whatever it is, right? I said, my students can do this for about a couple of lakhs. Why are they paying so much? Then they had a steer-by-wire system where they would replace a human being in the Scorpio on a suspension testing track, right? It goes like that, okay? And so they relieve his back by automating this thing. So you have an autonomous Scorpio driving around, and that device cost about 2.5 crores. I said, my kids can build it for 25 lakhs, right? So why are we buying these things? And that's what, after 1 year, I went back to IIT, because I realized that in industry, one needs to change the entire paradigm. And industry will not change unless the market changes. So one has to change the market, change the awareness which is outside. And IIT is the best place to do that. So that's when e-Yantra was born. So I wanted to create an army of people who can solve these kind of problems, because solving these kind of problems is going to affect the country more than anything else.
So I'll tell you one thing. So, you talked about Professor Phatak. From our side, he was a terror, because he used to be the guy on government of Maharashtra and government boards who used to evaluate RFPs that we used to submit. And obviously, none of us, obviously we were all kids, and, companies who send you, there is one Maharashtra RFP for district collector's office automation, or go Maharashtra forestry project and all. And there used to be this person there, and he used to ask us such deep technology questions, and nobody knew the answer, okay? Because we were not, it's like a chain, right? Somebody who is developing that code is sitting somewhere in the back, because he or she cannot be, he's not client facing. So he used to go. So yeah, but he was like legendary in the IT world from that perspective.
Yeah, he is.
He was like...
So he's my mentor. Now I've learned to do that also.
So I think, so one of the things, like you talked about is that, so we have been fortunate to talk to folks like Pramod Verma and, the UPI guys and this, that. So one of the things that they always kind of talk about is, how do you scale things to population scale? Is that, you take something, you can take according to them, you have to, everything in India to make a difference has to work at scale. So you can't build something and hope it scales. Now that it's working in my lab,
Exactly.
now it will work for 1 billion people.
Exactly.
But I mean, to this, so I'm not saying that all these things also can work that way, but how do you then take these cool, even a lemon sorting machine, or even you put a robot that can absorb the impact and relay that to a sensor and build it. So how do you then scale these things from your lab or your setup to a like the Mahindras and the Tatas and the Ashok Leylands and all, at least in the automotive, all start buying it and it becomes an industry standard. Or then you say, okay, chalo, this is a solved problem, I will buy this one. We don't have to go and do it. I mean, how does that work in your engineering world? I mean,
Okay, it works in the same way. It works because we have problems of such scale that only when you can respond to scale are you even solving the problem.
Okay.
People don't realize how important it is. We actually own our problems. And problems are where opportunities come from, right? You can confront a problem and say, oh dear, I must run away to America. This is too big a problem. On the other hand, if you apply yourself to that problem, you'll discover that there is a solution to it, right? And it's right in front of you. Otherwise, this UPI and all that would not have happened.
Correct.
We have such scale that only if we design for scale is anything useful in this country. With a population of 1.4 billion, it
Correct.
has to scale, right? So we from the very beginning were thinking of scale. And I'll give you an idea of breakthroughs that we had to show that it's possible. It's mainly in the intelligence of our kids. Okay. And the numbers game. Like for instance, the first time, so we wanted to do what I was doing in my class with more students, right? So we thought the best way to do it is to train the teachers. So over 2 years, we trained 700 teachers, over 35 live-in workshops at IIT Bombay in all the stuff that we had developed. And we thought that they'll go out there and they'll cause a revolution.
Correct.
In academia, right? Hands-on learning, problem-based learning and all that. We did all this work in 2 years and nothing happened. And then we could have just packed our bags and gone home. We said, no. Kids need to learn this because it's very important. So how else can we do it? Then we said, why don't we go directly to the kids, right? That was unheard of. And how can we go to them? What do they like to do? They like competitions. So why don't we package all this gyan as a competition and put it out and see what happens? So now what the kids were doing in the lab at IIT Bombay is that they were solving a problem that they had thought of using this robot. Okay. We called it the Firebird robot at that time. And it was eminently, so it was basically a little computer size of a quarter plate with 2 motors and encoders and all that. And you could interface this with lots of sensors and actuators. Sensors sense the environment and actuators make something happen, turns a motor or pump or whatever it is, right? Most of these robotic kind of problems is sensing, thinking and actuating. It boils down to that. Right? Your sensors can be fancy, your actuation can be fancy, but that's what's happening in a fighter aircraft or a missile or whatever it is, right? So that's how it is. And we wanted to transmit this gyan. Now they used to find a problem for themselves and solve it. Now I can deal with 20 problems in my class because I'm there and we can review them and all that. But if we have, so first time we opened our thing for registration of students, we didn't know how many students would come, but we realized that we can't give thousands of separate problem statements because you can't review it. That's when we came up with a very innovative idea that why don't we characterize a real problem as a game, gamify it, right? And gamify it in a way that the problem is represented by artwork on a flex sheet, right? And all the complexity is in this robot. So it'll do line following, it'll do pick and place and all these kind of things. And you put enough design flexibility so they can solve this problem in 10 different ways. So it gives them that empowerment, right? And it didn't work with the teachers. We had to bring them here and so on. So when we first opened the doors for registration for this competition, we had 4,500 registrations.
Wow.
It took us 2 years to train 700 teachers. Residential workshop. We said, how will we train these guys, right? And that's when we took a leap of faith. And this is the most important thing because this tells you something about this country which we didn't realize. We said, what if I just gave these guys a selection test because I don't have that many kits, right? And 20% of these 4,500 guys, I made them into teams of 4 and just mailed them the kits, mailed them my lectures as to how to learn to drive all these things, and gave them the problem statement and let them solve the problem themselves. And then we just sent it out, and with bated breath, we sat. We saw these kids out there, they are very poorly taught and all that in their colleges. They've never faced hardware like this in their lives and all that. What would they do? But much to our amazement, they mastered the technology and they came up with solutions that even we could not think about. And that made us realize what a potential lies in this country, in the kids, right? We designed the competition in a way that even if you're a little boy in Jharsuguda or some remote village, you can participate, right? Because we gave the kit with everything in it, okay? And the only thing we assumed that you have to have a Kirana store near you, right? Because we use mung dal in some things, like if you are doing a pothole filling robot, you'd fill the pothole with mung dal. So you'd have a hopper and you'd release that and fill potholes, then detect the next one and all that. Mung dal, whatever is in a Kirana store and what's in a basic hardware store, right? And the only jump for us was that they needed to print that artwork on a flex sheet. Would they have a flex printing shop? And then we realized an obvious truth. We said, jahan bhi jao, udhar neta rehta hai.
Correct.
They are politicians, and where there's a politician, there's flex printing going on, right? So we adopted that, and we've never looked back. And every year we realized that it was a challenge. These kids were mastering this thing so fast, and there was now robotic labs in colleges. The culture is catching on. Seniors are training juniors and all that kind of stuff. And we started upping the ante every year. And now I'm absolutely amazed at. We've taken them to levels which I would never dream about. Now we have technology stacks that we train them in. So what we are looking at e-Yantra as is that it's a skilling university like no other, right? And where we train them in drones, for instance, right? Drones, we teach them how to build a drone from scratch, build a drone control system. Most drones you get in the market, you cannot access their sensors, actuators. Right? You just have a remote control. We make them assemble the drones, build their own flight control mechanism, control system to make it hover, then do waypoint navigation and all that. And then we give them a problem like a real Google map, right? Imagery. And we keep a little yellow box there and says, fly this drone with a video camera looking down and give me the latitude, longitude of that box. So this is actually a real problem, but in a gamified way where they have to sort of do this. That's drone. Control systems. You build a 3D model of a bike with an inertial wheel on top, make the bike balance using control algorithms like PID control and all that, which they learn about, but never use. Okay. Complex ones, which even the faculty don't know, like LQR control. They use these things to balance the robot, then autonomously follow a line and do pick and place. And you get all sorts of beautiful designs of bikes and all that kind of stuff. That's another stack. Chip design is another stack where we use reconfigurable hardware, which are FPGAs, where they have to program a processor and do all sorts of stuff to make it work. So they've learned chip design. There's so IoT, right? You name the stack. So we have 5 or 6 very popular technology stacks like that, which they master to solve the problem. And it's amazing the level that we've taken it to, and kids master it. Like we've had some amazing experiences, like one very complex theme where we had to build a snake, right? So you have to 3D print a snake, all those segments, integrate it appropriately with motors, integrate it with electronics. So autonomously you have to make it move also, right? It can move, identify rodents, which are patches red and blue on the flex, avoiding obstacles, going up ramps and all that. All this they learn in 6 months on their own. We give them a budget for printing. So we tied up with an agency and they send all their models, they get printed and sent back to them and all that. Amongst the finalists at IIT Bombay was a team from APC Rai Polytechnic in Jadavpur, West Bengal, who beat the hell out of the IITs and NITs to get there. And we've been finding this tier 2 and tier 3 city kids have been beating the IITs and everybody else to come to the finals. In fact, recently it's become popular in IITs also. So we are getting a few guys from IIT Madras and IIT Roorkee and all that come. But majorly it is kids from colleges that you never heard about, which shows how democratic this entire way of doing things is and how scalable it is. And that's where we are now. So in 13 years now, we've trained 250,000 young engineers, and whoever we have touched gets placed at 50 to 100% higher packages in jobs, or they go to higher degrees at the best universities. They go to Carnegie Mellon, Cornell, they come to the IITs and all that, or they go and do startups, good startups. And I'll tell you about those also.
So those are successes. Tell us about some fails.
Failures, the fact is that, whoever engages with us, we've noticed, we asked ourselves the same thing. We get these from 15,000 students, we get about 150 finalists, right?
Correct.
It's a competition. And from those 150 finalists, we give 100 of them internships at IIT Bombay, which is a very coveted thing, because when they come for the internship, we treat them like leaders, the future industry leaders, and we train them in geopolitics, geoeconomics, mental health, money, investing, and all that. We have Admiral Anil Chopra, a good friend, who used to be Chief of Western Naval Command. He comes and talks about geopolitics. Now, when someone like this, who's the sword arm of foreign policy, talks to you about South China Sea and strategic imperatives, it's a totally different experience. And they love it. Engineers are not as narrow-minded and one-dimensional as one would like to imagine, So that's what we do. Yeah. So the question you asked was what about the failures, right? When someone attempts something, they need not necessarily win.
Correct.
They can even fail, right? But in that failure lies a lot of education itself. Okay, like we find that as you gain from us as much as you stayed with us in the journey, basically. You might fail. So our competition is in two stages, stage 1 and stage 2, right? Stage 1 is inside a simulator, which is free and open source. Stage 2 is using actual hardware, which we give you, right? So depending on how long you've gone in the journey, right, you gain. Is that a failure? I don't know.
So I didn't mean failure in the sense of failed, but there is always this balance that you have to draw between failing experimenting or experimenting failing and then still keeping things on track. How do you find those balances?
Or anything that might have failed in your process, which you feel, I don't know, maybe it could have been better, or
so I didn't mean failure in the sense of they failed.
So maybe students' failure.
Yeah.
No, it's a question of perception. I don't look at it as failure. I feel it I've not got it right yet.
Correct.
Like, I would like to have scaled this 1,000 times, but I've not got there yet. But this seems respectable, but I'm not happy. Like, we've tried various things. Like, our biggest challenge is that we do stuff and we can't market ourselves, right? Okay. And we can't get the word out. It's like we are giving a dawat, which is very scalable. I can serve 1 lakh also, but if only 10,000 people come, then that's my failure, that I've not been able to get the message out, right? Perhaps I'm not a good marketing person, but then on the other hand, I've tried the professional marketing people also.
Correct.
And it's not been impressive.
I can imagine.
So,
right?
Tell me something, just from the point of view of maybe somebody will listen. So if somebody wants to be part of your program,
yes,
how do they do that? If, like you said, you're obviously getting it, and maybe it's word of mouth.
Yes.
It's like this university in Jadavpur. Maybe seniors tried and failed, and this is this one was successful.
Yes.
So how do people get to know, and what should do? Like supposing there is some guy in Bongaigaon and he wants to be part of this.
See, word of mouth, we send almost 20,000 posters around to all the colleges to put them up on their notice boards and all that. Along the way, the ministry said that you should make yourself self-sustaining and all that. We charge a very nominal amount for registration, right? Less than the price of a kind of multiplex ticket or whatever it is. Nothing really. We didn't want to create friction between youngsters. Correct. I can't see why. So I think the reason why we've not scaled faster is because our entire higher education system is actually broken. They don't realize the value of project-based learning and these kind of learnings. We are not part of the mainstream curriculum, right? We've purposely not done that because didn't want to formalize ourselves, because then it limits you in what you can do once you become part of the
Correct. Then it's
curriculum,
lectures,
right?
courses, credits.
So
all
so
that.
we can't be free to innovate at whatever speed we want
True.
and this and that, right? So we deliberately kept ourselves out of it. As a result of which, only enthu people engage with us, which is what we want, right? And there could be the thing that if they go to their parents and say, I want to take part in this competition, padhai karo, don't waste your time, right? There could be that thing also. This is something that they have to do apart from their academics. So it's a challenge to integrate both things. That's another reason why it's not happening. But mainly, I feel that people don't realize the importance of this way of learning, because the predominant feeling in most engineers is पढ़ाई करो, अच्छे नंबर मिलना चाहिए, इसके बाद नौकरी मिलेगी. They are totally naukri oriented, which they feel that they'll get after good results in what they are doing. That's the cultural thing which is there in our society, which needs to change. And that kind of change happens slowly. Right?
So I have to tell you this, my father-in-law, he used to say this, that his biggest frustration with IITs and engineers, he's saying, IIT किया, फिर IIM किया और साबुन तेल बेचा. क्या किया लाइफ में? मतलब he said, if you are an engineer, you should not, I mean, be doing an MBA or something. You should be, solving something, taking your engineering. He said, साबुन तेल बेचा.
Absolutely.
What did you do with your life? He said, फिर IIT नहीं देना चाहिए था.
Absolutely.
That was his whole pain.
No, because IIT is like a filter which gives you bright kids who, if you apply to sabun and tel, you'll make lots of money, right?
Correct.
And people are after the money, right? But I feel things are changing now, changing very fast, in the sense that is not going to work. That doesn't work now, right? And those kind of jobs that used to be an unlimited number are going to disappear, because AI is going to automate anything that's going to be automated, right? Like, for instance, a lot of the software jobs were Godagiri jobs. Until testing and all that kind of, those things are going to disappear. So the answer came to me from a young journalist I spoke to, right? And I told her, look, your job is going to be under threat, right? Because now everything is available. You have these bots which are writing news and all that kind of stuff. She said, no, is that I have feet on the ground and I can do original research. I can find out news stories which bots don't know about. So that's my answer to engineers. India is a growing economy, growing at an exponential rate. And it's crying out for products, new products and services and all that. And who's going to build those things for us? Just screwdriver technology from abroad is not going to work for us, because our realities are different. So you have to innovate for local consumption. And who's going to do it? You guys. But the culture is not to do that, because in our culture, in a young engineer's house, agar pankha band ho gaya, वो फैन वाले को बुलाओ, right? Electrician को बुलाओ. They don't even change their own light bulb, right? We don't have that DIY culture in our homes. So that's where we are trying to actually do something interesting in that space. Okay, because what we find is that we have 3 big initiatives. One is robotics competition, which trains you in skills. Then we have the innovation challenge, which trains you to be an entrepreneur. And then we have the lab setup initiative, where we set up 550 labs across the country, which sets up an innovation adda in your college. This first one has been very successful, because we are training you and you get jobs very easily.
Correct.
Because you've been trained. People come once, twice, thrice also, because they want more and more training, because they want a job.
Correct.
This thing in which we have labs works well, because wherever we have labs, seniors are training juniors and their performance improves and they're picking up problems from outside. They're not buying BE projects anymore, and good things are happening, right? And one more very interesting thing, the advanced gyan that we give in our competition to students, many faculty also don't have that, right? So what's happening is that these kids, through these labs, are passing this gyan on to the junior students. But the competition, which is the really important one for us, which is the e-Yantra Innovation Challenge, where we expect them to look for interesting problems to solve and solve them, that's not as successful, right? Because what I would like is for these kids from our competition to go into that, but they are not going into that. So you find other kids who don't have technical skills trying to solve problems, and their inventions are very feeble. So this year we've launched a new initiative called e-Yantra IPL, right? Where we want to make engineering sexy, and we want it to become a spectator sport, right? Where like you have cricket IPL, right? Innovation Premier League, e-Yantra. Okay, so we got a first batch of talented youngsters from our main competition. We've given them internships as you have to take part in this. And we've chosen the area of agriculture. So myself and my colleague, who's running the show now at IIT Bombay, Professor Shivram Kalyanikrishnan, he is an expert in AI and reinforcement learning and so on. We went to Baramati and we saw what's happening with the agricultural development trust there and agricultural universities there, and saw some very interesting stuff going on. Engineering, right? What value is it? Sugarcane farmer, young man, joined his family business. They used to previously farm sugarcane in the old way, and they'd use 5 lakh liters of water per acre. 5 lakh. Now, by using an AI-based sensing device with IoT in the field, right, and by monitoring soil moisture and doing drip irrigation, they brought the consumption of water down from 5 lakh liters to 25,000 liters per acre. That just shows you what's possible. And they are doing this for, pesticide spraying, very specific and all these kind of things. So it just shows the potential of technology out there in the field. Now, our farms are about 2.5 acres.
Yeah, small holdings.
Abroad, it's 10,000 acres. So you can't use those combine harvesters here. You need to devise different ways of doing this stuff. And I feel that our kids ought to be doing more of this. So what we did, we took these guys to a place called Vigyan Ashram in Pabal in remote Maharashtra. It's about 2 hours away from Pune. They are doing a lot of rural community-based innovation. And there's a bunch of really talented engineers there. So we immerse them there for 1 week in the agricultural area, because most of our kids don't know what a problem is, leave alone agricultural problems, So immerse them in agricultural area with talking to farmers, seeing the problems and all that. And now they've come up with very interesting farming problems that they've articulated. And now we are helping them build a prototype. And there's a big Kisan exhibition in Pune in December. I said, your first prototype will be exhibited there. Right? So we are now trying to build up this idea of making innovation a spectator sport, hoping that, families will also take part, like mothers and sisters and all that, seeing this guy's solution. Why doesn't he do sensor calibration, before he solves the problem and all that? They should be saying that. Why is it taking this route? It should go straight or whatever it is, So make innovation and problem solving a spectator sport. I feel that is what will perhaps change the culture.
So this thing, so we have a lot of options in the solution side, or at least we can figure out. But is there a competition, or is there a need to just articulate every problem that we have in this country? And I know this may sound like a really stupid thing. It's like, whenever we hear, there are so many problems to solve. So as you ask somebody, name 10 or whatever it is, or in the. So I'm not saying that we need to name all that, but is there another category in your competition or anything that says, okay, you will be given a prize if you identify 5 problems or 10, and then you kind of create this whole inventory of problems, which then you cross-match with this thing. I mean, is that even an idea worth having?
It's an idea worth having. We had that at the beginning. We first called it an ideas competition.
Okay.
But then ideas competition is pretty lame. You come up with ideas and so what? You come up with a proposal and it's somebody else's hassle to kind of build it. Other government initiatives have tried that, like Smart India Hackathon and all that. So they have an inventory of ideas, right, from ministries and all that. But they also have a similar problem in the sense that the ideas don't get translated very well. Okay. And idea by itself is not enough. It needs someone with a passion to convert that idea into something which has potential. That passion is much more important. And we've realized that to create that passion, you need to have people with empathy. That's what's missing in our education, that we don't have enough kids with empathy. They want to run away and not solve the problem. They need to take responsibility that this is my country, this is my problem, and it is my duty and my privilege to solve this problem. Unless you have that, you won't have the rest. Because if a person wants to solve a problem, they'll do whatever it needs to actually solve the problem, right? So that's a mindset change that we need to create, and I'm looking at ways to do that. So perhaps you might have some ideas.
That's an interesting one, because also both of you spoke about ideas, but I think what is more critical is problem identification,
Yes.
because I don't think we teach problem identification.
More than problem identification is empathy.
Empathy is to begin
Yes.
with. That I'm saying is a far larger cultural change that you will
No,
need to
I'll
bring.
tell you why. Now, talking to you, I've realized what the issue is. Right? That we've divorced the humanities from
I
engineering.
agree with you.
Correct.
Because humanities sensitizes you,
Correct.
right? And creates an empathy. And from that empathy will be derived everything else.
So that's it's actually quite interlinked, right? Because you need to understand that there is a problem.
Yes.
And empathy is required to understand that there is a
Exactly.
problem. But I think it's also about saying that I can make the difference. I think one of the challenges I at least hear is there is no sense of I can make a difference or I can bring a difference. That's not happening. We're all trying to find money and
So, but
success
to the
and all of
argument to that, Shritar, is, I mean, I always hear this that, in the West, people are at a different level of standard. So, they can afford to think about this. So, dal roti ka problem hai. So,
But we're no longer at that
No, I
stage,
know,
at
but I'm
least
saying
in urban India.
Then they'll say,
We're
okay,
not.
you are a city, this thing, but in the villages, you don't know. So, is that even an issue? Is that, that we are so stuck up or struggling with daily necessities that, you don't want to give yourself the time?
No.
I don't think that's a challenge anymore, not at a
Yeah.
certain level.
We are victims of something I like to call the post-colonial
Correct.
scarcity mindset.
Correct.
There's no scarcity, but it's learned scarcity from your parents.
Absolutely.
Because parents are saying, "Arey, naukri le lo, IAS karo, ya bank ka naukri le lo, vagara." That kind of attitude is not going to get you anywhere, right? And happily, we have examples in front of
Correct.
us. I'll give you a simple example. A young boy, middle class, Muthu Vangaliyappan, comes to the finals. This is 2012. Takes part in the e-Yantra competition 2 times. And the second year, he comes for an internship. And I had a friend in 2013 from Copenhagen Business School, Sudhanshu Rai, who came and gave a workshop on entrepreneurship. He showed that you don't have to be a Bansal or an Agarwal to be an entrepreneur. That it's a skill, it's a muscle that needs to be exercised.
Correct.
Okay. And this boy, after this 5-day workshop, was highly enthused. Sir, I want to do a startup. I said, Muthu, great. Go back, don't do a job, either do a startup or do a higher degree, because both these things add value. And then he went off and he worked. After he completed his education the next year, he worked with Bosch for 2 years. Then he did a startup in Coimbatore, right? And soon it was a startup called Catamaran Robotics, and now it's become Goat Robotics. And soon he was selling mobile security robots to condominium societies in Singapore. You have a condominium society with about 10 security guards, and now he can do the work with 6 guards, and 4 guards ka kaam his robot
Robots
does,
are doing.
patrols the campus and all
Correct.
that. He sells bellboy robots to 7-star hotels, Marina Bay Sands, where you put your luggage in your board.
Correct.
It's programmed to go and call the lift and go and stand outside your door.
Correct.
He does warehousing robots. In fact, recently I went to a huge exhibition only a few months ago at Nesco, the exhibition center. One of the biggest stands there was his robots, Goat Robotics. And I was very proud. I said, even one success like this is great. But that's not the only one. There's another guy called Keyur Rakholia, who's got a company now called Heavens Limited, and he credits his mindset change to e-Yantra. He's a boy from Surat, and he's now gone into a solar industry. So he sets up solar installations in households. He's done some 7,000 solar installations. He's tied up with Adani Solar and all that type of stuff. And he's become a bit of a business leader now
Correct.
in Gujarat. So it's just all we take the credit for is just flipping a switch, a mindset change. Hey, you can do it. And this is how, right? And then everything else is up to their own genius and luck for having got where they are. But he himself, Keyur, says that if it had not been for this experience, I might have been working in some electronic company as a technician or whatever it is. But this opened up his eyes to other opportunities and gave them the self-confidence, right? And there have been other stories like that. People who built physiotherapy robots, and there's a drone-based company which is doing surveying with the drones and all that kind of stuff. And there are many other stories which nobody tells us, and I discover later on. Okay.
This is absolutely fascinating. And I think Samiran and I will just continue to have another 2-hour conversation with you. But just trying to understand that, where do you see the future for e-Yantra? Because of course there are challenges and of course there are things, but where is the future vision for e-Yantra?
Just as a corollary, I think before we started, you did mention this whole thing about Mumbai first. So if we were to apply e-Yantra to Mumbai first to solve just Mumbai city's problems, I mean, how would you even envision a situation like that? Or is it like just...
So I got involved with Mumbai first just for that reason, because I thought that I must prospect for interesting problems which these youngsters can solve. So we have this network of 550 labs which you have to feed with interesting problems, at least point them towards them. Right?
Give them one problem, which is how do we solve for garbage in this city?
Absolutely.
I'm
People have been trying
tired
that.
of it.
But I'd like to just divert the conversation a little bit and then come back to this.
Sure.
So over COVID, right, we've been wondering, our college system is such that by the time the kids have come to us as engineers, they lack that zing which you would like them to have, that innovation and that kind of mindset and all that. So in COVID, we had the opportunity that people were saying to us, why don't you do what you do with school children? So we did it online, inside a simulator, teaching them robotics, right? 7th standard upwards. And we wondered how it would work. The same thing that we do with students in college, we are doing with school students, 7th standard upwards. It was a huge success. Kids found it to be a stress buster.
Correct.
They were really enjoying the experience. It shows that you have no limits, even at school, for doing these kind of things. And then we saw that their programming skills are not very good. So we launched another competition called Game Inventor, where they learned Python by building a series of games. Each game becomes more complex. You have 10 games. The 11th game, you have to design and build your own game, make it multiplayer and available on the web. 7th standard kids are going to online resources and solving problems and coming back. So it just shows there's no limit in what our kids can actually do. And that time they're highly adventurous. Then was a very important thing which I'd like to mention here. This whole thing about empathy, right? How do we arouse that? And we've discovered how to do that. I was at a online panel discussion where we had participation from some 6,000 Kendriya Vidyalaya principals. The lady who was leading the discussion was Nishi Mishra, who was the principal of Sindhya Kanya Vidyalaya in Gwalior. And very erudite lady, and I wanted to impress her. Right? So I discovered that she's studied history. So I said, hey, why don't we try technology and humanities and see what happens? Okay. So he said, why don't we have kids study history using technology? So what we did is we ran a competition called the Virtual Museum Competition, right?
Correct.
Where kids have to learn photogrammetry, right? Where you take a picture of an artifact with a mobile phone. You can take 50 pictures, put it into a software, and it gives you a 3D model. Then you tell a story about that artifact. Right? You tell a story, it's what it means and why it is and all that, and what else is happening in the world at that time. And then you make a virtual museum exhibit. Like in a real museum, you have a podium and you have a stand and you have this thing, and then you have posters and you have videos playing and so on. This entire caboodle has to be conceptualized, designed, and presented. Right? The only difference from it being in the real world is that it's in the virtual world. And we ran this competition, and we were again dumbstruck by what kids can do, right? In the sense that 7th standard kids were doing empirical research in history, going to the stakeholders, interviewing them, getting stories out, and scanning things from little artifacts to family heirlooms to huge temples, and creating a virtual museum exhibit. And we had amongst the jury members. So something we taught them is, first we taught them the meaning of history by presenting your family genealogy.
Correct.
Okay. Then we discovered that they would catch their grandparents and extract these stories out of them and write them up. And then we found that nobody's story is boring if you go back into genealogy. Everybody has a fascinating story. And their job was to present this to us in a wow manner. But all the stories were wow. So that taught you about what history is. It acquaints you with the fact that facts can be uncertain and all that kind of stuff. And you have to sort of objectively come at a conclusion. Then we teach them research methodology, right? How to piece together your story using this. It could be reliable, unreliable evidence. It could be a physical artifact, written something, or the actual artifact in front of you or whatever. And you have to objectively come up with a story that fits all these things. What is that called? Critical thinking.
Correct.
Right? That is what IAS officers do. Pradhan Mantri Yojana deploy karna hai, hua ke nahi, kyun nahi hua, vagera vagera. That's what scientists do, right? That's a very fundamental skill in life which we are not taught. And we are not taught to question authority.
Correct.
Or to cite sources. And amazingly, we found, apart from these kids having done a great job, where Dinesh Singh, who was the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, he was part of the jury, and we had a lady who was head of history department in Delhi University. They're saying, this is amazing. This is a new paradigm of education. And the historian was saying that these kids are doing empirical research. She's giving data for my postgraduate students to analyze. Right? Amazing. You know, they found some murti in some remote place, some Brahma murti in Goa, for instance, which we hadn't heard about. And they did some research on it. And these kind of things. So what we've realized is that critical thinking can be taught using these kind of stratagems. And we found parents very excited about it. And this link is there in those links that I gave you, where parents are remarking, you know, after this experience, kids have become better in their academics.
Correct.
And they're asking questions. They don't swallow anything easily now.
The teachers must be not happy with you.
So but that is the quality you need in an inventor, in a writer, in an author, a scientist.
Yes.
Right? Anybody has to have that questioning and curious mind. So that's where I shall rest this diversion of
I'll
mine.
just give you one. I mean, maybe you already know. So we did this little quiz thing, just a tech quiz with this company called Nexus Consulting, you know.
Okay.
So they actually do this national quiz called Indica for school students.
Okay.
Very curious kids. It's general knowledge. Okay. This thing. I mean, maybe that's another avenue. They get about, we did it in Bombay, they got about 100 entries. In Kochi, they got 100 entries just to come on a Sunday and do a quiz. I'm assuming these people who quiz are also curious. So, I mean, that could just be another way of, when you talk about school students, it would be fantastic actually, just to, I just keep thinking, you know, how would more people benefit from this? How will more people benefit from something like this?
But this is absolutely fascinating.
This is like not worth a podcast. This is like, you know, you can make a little mini series out of this. It's just fantastic. Well, I didn't want to do a disservice by interject with a question, because that would have been a disservice to the narration, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's absolutely fascinating what you're doing, and more power to whatever you're doing.
Kavi, do you want to just talk about this book that you have kind of compiled, and, you know, where you could even get it and what's in it, and, you know, what could one, you know, I mean, that could just be another motivator if nothing else.
Yeah. This book was just an attempt to thank all the participants in the e-Yantra story, from the people who've been with us in the journey, and to tell them what we've done and so on. And these books are just very special gifts that we give to some people. We brought one for you also.
Thank you so much.
Right? If I'd known that you were here, I'd have brought one for you.
We feel privileged.
Also.
No, don't worry about it.
And this book has been written, we've called it a toolbox for a new India, because I believe that what we've done is very distinct, very special, totally homegrown. When we go to conferences abroad, for instance, robotics education conferences, right? In Europe, for instance, I go year after year. And when we present what we have, we find others are presenting robotics training with 15 people, 20 people. And when we go and say that we are doing this with 5,000 people or 10,000 people, they just can't relate to us, because we are teaching the same skills, more complex skills at a much higher scale. It's like UPI.
Correct.
Right?
That's just, it's stunning because whenever we talk about digital identity to anybody, it's like, we had this example. It's like, they were doing 1 million registrations a day, which is like Finland in 5 days.
Absolutely.
Like it's over, right?
Absolutely.
They don't. I mean, that scale just
Does not
blows
register.
everybody's mind.
Absolutely.
And first they think something must be wrong, so they doubt, and then they realize it's working, and then they get, okay, there must be something in it.
Absolutely. In fact, this project has been something which has brought my coming to India. It's given it a kind of a closure that we've done something useful. Having come back, was a papad bel ke maar kha ke kuch kaam to kiya hai, And but I feel that there's so much to do. Like for instance, we feel that we've scratched the surface. 250,000 over 12 years is a very small number. We turn out 1 million engineers every year. And I feel that we need to really increase our scale. So now I'm looking at how to scale this up 100 times, right? So we are looking at how to do it. And my desire is that, see, what's going to happen is that AI is going to reduce a lot of jobs. A lot of robots are going to take over people's jobs. But I would prefer if the robot that is taken over your job is a robot that you have
created. Absolutely. That you have created.
Right?
Nicely put.
Yeah. And this should be done scalably throughout all industries. Like, for instance, we have such wonderful skills like in the handicrafts and artisanal work and so on. Can we do the drudgery with the help of robots, but increase our productivity without diluting the artistry?
Correct.
Right? That's a challenge which we need to answer and respond to. Can we create beauty without making it industrialized and mundane? Right?
That's quite a fascinating challenge to have.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
Where the genius of the individual can stand
Shine.
out and be aided. Because I see AI and robotics in the way that how computers came first, the first wave of assistants, right? You had access to
Correct.
an assistant in a computer. Then you had internet, where you had an assistant with access to vast amounts of knowledge, but there's too much knowledge, hard to deal with. Now you have an intelligent assistant where they go out there and they kind of bring you the knowledge that you actually need. And then you can have a conversation, right? And now you have agentic AI, which is like a young intern who's Oxford
Correct.
or IIT trained or better,
correct.
right? Who goes away and does your work for you and comes out, is
back.
this what you want, kind of stuff. And then you decide. And I feel that this kind of device, rather than reduce the number of jobs, will make power and empower much larger number of people. Because now a farmer who's speaking in Marathi only can talk to this thing in Marathi. He knows the problems that he has or she has and what they want to solve. Now they'll have the power of solving it themselves.
Correct.
So I see that is going to transform us in ways that we don't anticipate, and we should not be naive about, it'll take away jobs. Jobs are going to change. The kind of skill sets you need will have to change. Your skill sets will require empathy now,
Correct.
right? Rather than, because our education system until now has been training us to be robots. Right? And now we have to learn how to be humans again, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel that AI is going to help us be more like humans again.
That's a whole new field. That AI will make us human. It's like a whole new.
If it helps us get more empathy, I will be very happy.
It empowers us,
Yes.
regardless of where we are. I can be a small farmer in a small village, and I will have access to the same power that you and I have here.
That's
Isn't that
true.
empowering?
It is. It is.
It's
So that's something that we don't anticipate.
fantastic.
Fantastic. Kavi, thank you so much for joining us
Most
today.
welcome.
I know these guys are going to have a tough time editing this, but
Okay.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's been extremely enlightening, at least for me, because I started reading on this very late in
Okay.
life. But fantastic to have you here.
Thank you. It's been a
Thank you for
privilege.
this.
No, absolutely. And I think Kavi had once invited me to be a mentor. I said, I kind of realized I wouldn't be worthy of that. I think this is my only contribution to e-Yantra.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people who hear it, if even a fraction of them get interested and carry the torch forward, then that will be a victory for all of us.
More power to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Jai Hind.